Eh. Two, 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 two. Two, 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 two. Two, 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 two. Ja, and there's a lot. Two. Two, two.
Because I think it's better, because otherwise we're going to have to, yeah.
And then we just leave it here.
She needs to be on the camera. Okay, that's fine. You want to get closer? Yeah.
Do you want to look this side? Do you want to stand this side? I've got anti-glare my glasses.
Eh? Oh, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our colleagues, to our esteemed guests, to our staff, to our learners from Loyiso High School. Welcome to this world-class event that is going to take place at Nelson Mandela University. Myself and Lungelo will be your facilitators. My name is Amina Jakutsali. I am a senior lecturer in the Department of Public Management and Leadership. I am also the head of the department. So I'm very happy to be here and facilitate this event with the awesome Lungelo.
Oh, awesome, am I? Okay. Thank you, Doc. My name is Lungelo Manona. I'm from the Department of Language, Media and Communication. I am very honored to be one of your facilitators here today, and I am very, very impressed by the number of youth that are in the room. So well done for that.
So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome our Acting Vice Chancellor, Professor Andre Keert, to do our opening and welcome.
Thank you so much, Amina and Lungelo, for the opportunity to officially welcome you to this very important occasion, not only for our university, but of course also for our entire national democratic project. So I would like first to recognize the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, the Reverend Chris Nissen, as well as the following commissioners, Nomasluwi Kwenana, Pelile Ntule, and of course my good friend here, Tsepo Madlingozi, as well as representatives from other Chapter 9 institutions and public agencies involved in deepening democracy. So the context of the conversation here today is the upcoming national elections and our collective conduct and project during this particular period leading up to the elections, but also beyond the elections. And I thus respectfully also acknowledge the presence of also a good friend, Commissioner Janet Love, here with us, representing the Independent Electoral Commission, one of our very, very important public agencies. I also wish to recognize the National Human Rights Institutions, the NHRI, the Digital Rights Alliance attached to it, and the members present here representing Ethiopia, Australia, and Denmark as well. And a warm welcome to the CEO of the Human Rights Commission, Mr. Vusimusi Mkhize, as well as his entire executive management team that is here to support this launch as well. It's so great to reconnect, with this particular organization and the family of organizations as well. And of course, I've seen Eileen earlier today here. Also, a warm welcome to Eileen Carter, who has been collaborating with us now for a while here in the province. I would also like to welcome my own colleagues, friends, and staff and students of, very, very important, of our own university, of our region, of our metro, of our hinterland here, who have taken time to come and lend support to this very important event. All of you would know how crucial the question around e-elections is. And of course, warmest welcome to all our honored guests from the different schools, the private sector, civil society organizations, as well as dignitaries from all spheres of government, but also other protection and regulatory agencies in our space and who are part of our constitutional architecture and the different sets of balances that we're trying to achieve via our primary legal instrument, of course. As a university, and it's amazing, I must say, to see the South Campus auditorium almost filled, for this particular event. Just important. And of course, it bodes well for both the strengthening of our Chapter 9 institutions and the kind of work that they will have to do under trying circumstances, because the general liberal democratic project is under strain, not only on our continent, but across the globe as well. As a university, we have had productive relationships with the Human Rights Commission here in the province. And I myself more or less grew up in the Chapter 9 space, from 1996 to 2008 before I shift off into the university sector. So I do have a peculiar sense of nostalgia, in welcome you all into what was once also a home for me as well. So thanks, Chris, Janet, and the other colleagues for choosing our university to launch this. And under our MOU, we have hosted 2 successful events, just to give you a sense of the responsiveness of the university to the broader mandates of Chapter 9 institutions, which we do regard as a cluster and family of institutions which are very, very crucial for the democratic outlook and future of our country as well. And of course, all of us as a collective should support the work of these institutions. So one of those events had to do with disinformation and human rights in 2022, and also the launch of the Social Media Charter in 2023. And you can see how these particular thematics are coming together around the launch that we will be having today as well. So the Commission's interest, not only for the Human Rights Commission, but also for its sister institutions, is driven by its singular mandate. Right? And we cluster them as the deepening of democracy, and in the case of the Human Rights Commission, of course, the promotion and protection of human rights, and thus its commitment to ensure that the upcoming national elections uphold human rights principles. In scholarly terms, around constitutional law, we are always regarded as like the what one can say, the poster child of the human rights project of the 1990s. In some ways, we have lived up to that particular ideal, and in other ways, we have failed. But that's the nature of different sets of social orders. And we have to think what it is that we do within the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, of course, as these processes unfold. So elections have come to witness numerous violations, including discrimination, privacy breaches, limitations on freedom of expression, dissemination of misinformation and hate speech through digital platforms. And given these rapid technological advancements, it is crucial to proactively safeguard these rights during the electoral processes. And so for this reason, the Commission has partnered with the international NHRI Digital Rights Alliance to launch an e-election statement developed by the Alliance, followed by a panel and audience discussion later on. So you are in for a great treat, of course, as well. And thanks to Chupe and Jackie, of course, for assisting me with putting these notes together, just in case you think, Chair, that I've just written the speech this morning. I have a team that works with me on this. So the Alliance's focus on the impact of technology on human rights practice, inclusive of elections, is indeed noteworthy. I think that elections will become entirely different from what we have been used to. Time magazine has called 2024 the ultimate election year, as 64 countries constituting 49% of the people on the planet go to elections in this year, 2024. And these results, of course, of the processes will have major consequences for life and living, for planet and people. We are thus all required to advance the objectives of the statement at this particular historical moment, not only because of the total current technological and digital enframing of the world and the life world and our lives, but also because of the integrity of elections during this particular digital era. That, of course, will shift and change and develop and progress and advance in a multitude of pathways that we are yet to imagine. So allow me, as I conclude, to say one line each about our two faculties that are involved in this event. The Faculty of Humanities has been very crucial in holding the relationships between the various type of Chapter 9 institutions together, and especially the Human Rights Commission. And its task is the revitalization of the humanities, and of course also pursuing the various forms of interpretive schemes that allow us to make sense of the interface between human machine, human technology, and the various processes like elections that will define the future for us. So the colleagues, Jackie, and of course Amina and other colleagues, you are well placed to speak about the human condition, in the context of the technological enframing of the world and the ethical, cultural, and philosophical impact of the digital, not only on the human, but on life in general. Our Faculty of Law is focused on serving and empowering society to fulfill our constitutional goals and is driven by justice, transformation, integrity, excellence, and accountability. And here again, of course, these notions, their meanings are shifting because of the digitalization of the live world. So many thanks to the two panels from these faculties for availing themselves to enrich, expand, and push the boundaries of the discussions that are to follow after the launch. So we look forward to the launch, Chair, today, as well as your engagement with the invitees, our staff, our students, our school leaders, our young people as well, and of course, welcome to those joining us via live streaming as well. So again, to all of you, many, many thanks for pitching. Welcome to our university, and thanks to the organizers for having chosen Mandela University as your preferred site for this launch event. Many, many thanks and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Prof. Geert, for that warm welcome. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is the Chief Operations Officer, Advocate Crystal Pillay.
Good morning to you all. Wow, this reminds me of my days as a lecturer. It's lovely in this auditorium looking at all these young adults. Good morning again, distinguished guests, esteemed participants in our program, revered colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me again extend a warm welcome to all of you and thank you all for joining us here today at the launch. As explained by our acting Vice Chancellor this morning, the launch of the Global NHRI Digital Rights Alliance e-elections statement. Your presence at this event, both in person and virtually, is greatly appreciated as we mark a significant milestone in our journey towards safeguarding democracy and advancing human rights in the digital age. Further, it gives me pleasure to also acknowledge the presence of our important partners and stakeholders, that's my task today, who have supported us as the South African Human Rights Commission in coming together to launch the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance statement, which is indeed a testament to our collective commitment to upholding digital rights and protecting the integrity of our electoral processes. I would like to start by acknowledging the presence of the chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Reverend Chris Nissen, Professor Andre Keat, who has just done the opening and welcome. I would like to acknowledge him as well, the acting Vice Chancellor of the Nelson Mandela University. The Independent Electoral Commission, in our midst, we have Commissioner Janet Love, Commissioners of the Human Rights Commission, Commissioners Kwinana, Commissioner Marin Glozi, and Commissioner Ntuli, and the CEO of the Commission, Mr. Vusi Mkhize. I would like to also acknowledge joining us today from international NHRIs and stakeholders on the virtual platform, the NHRI Ethiopia, Dr. Abdi Jibril, the Commissioner for Civil, Political and Socioeconomic Rights, the NHRI Australia, Ms. Lorraine Finlay, who's the Human Rights Commissioner, the NHRI Denmark, Mr. Gamrith Rasmussen, Senior Advisor for Human Rights, Business and Technology, and representatives of the Danish Embassy to South Africa. As far as our South African stakeholders are concerned, joining us both again in person and virtually, I would like to start by acknowledging our colleagues from the Nelson Mandela University who are our hosts today in this amazing auditorium. I have introduced Professor Andre Keat, who has done the opening and welcome, Dr. Amina Jakutsali and Mr. Lungelo Manona, who's our facilitators this morning, Dr. Ongama Mtimka, Mr. Jude Maturine, Mr. Wangalutu Simayile, and Dr. Jackie Lick, and all colleagues and staff of the Northwest University. Thank you for your support in this event. It is greatly appreciated. I would also like to acknowledge representatives from the Information Regulator, representative of the Government Communication and Information System, Ms. Koboso Lebenya, the Eastern Cape Provincial Head of the Public Protector South Africa, Ms. Sibongile Elwana, the Independent Commissions Authority of South Africa, Ms. Mamadupe Khatshe, the South African National Editors Forum Chairperson, Nkhalwe, representative of the United Nations Office of the High Commission of Human Rights, Regional Office of Southern Africa, and the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria, Mr. Ompa Shamano. And of course, all of you attending here in this auditorium in person here today, and the young adults who are enthusiastic for information and awareness in our response to the rapid evolution of digital technologies and their impact on human rights and the DRA, bringing together NHRIs from around the world to address the emerging challenges in the digital space. With that, I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Advocate Pillay. Just a gentle reminder, we are speaking about digital spaces and digital technologies. So just a reminder that on your bottle, on your water bottle, there's a QR code. You can scan and you will get the program for today. So I'm going to hand over to Lungelo.
Okay, I would also like to acknowledge the members of the Kenyan Human Rights Institute that have joined us here today. Thank you so much for your presence. Next, I would like to call upon South African Human Rights Commissioner E.N.B. Kwinana to come and tell us more about the purpose of the launch.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I stand on the protocol that has already been observed, but I will still like to acknowledge my chairperson, Chris Nissen of the South African Human Rights. And there goes my tablet off. And whilst we are talking about technology, me being born before technology, and then it just does that to me. It is with great pleasure and profound sense of purpose that I stand before you today to mark a significant milestone in our journey towards safeguarding democracy and advancing human rights in the digital age. As we gather here in Eastern Cape, the land of the legends and the birthplace of the iconic figures who fought tirelessly for justice and equality, we are reminded of the enduring legacy of those who paved the way for our democratic freedoms. As a national human rights institution, the South African Human Rights stands as a custodian of democracy and guardian of human rights in South Africa. Our mandate encompasses the protection, promotion, and monitoring of human rights across all sectors of society, including during electoral processes. Elections serve as a cornerstone of democracy, providing citizens with fundamental right to choose their representative and participate in shaping the future of their country. In South Africa, where the legacy of apartheid still echoes in the social fabric, elections hold particularly significance as a means of advancing equality, justice, and reconciliation. The South African Human Rights National Election Monitoring Strategy, which was developed in order to monitor human rights observance during this important period, plays a role in promoting the integrity of electoral processes by monitoring and addressing human rights violations, promoting transparency and accountability, and advancing for rights of all citizens, especially those from marginalized communities. Our commitment to upholding human rights during elections underscores the importance of fostering a democratic society where every voice is heard and every vote counts. Today, and with support of our partners from Nelson Mandela University, we come together to launch the National Human Rights Institution Digital Rights Alliance statement, a testament to our collective commitment to upholding digital rights and protecting the integrity of our electoral processes. The significance of this event cannot be overstated, for it signifies not only a call to action, but also rallying cry for digital democracy. Allow me to provide some background on the genesis of the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance statement and shed light on the significance of this collaborative endeavor. The South African Human Rights, an institution created by the South African Constitution, is a member of the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance, which is coordinated by our sister institution, the Danish Institute for Human Rights. This is a global network of 31 national human rights institutions dedicated to consolidating the role of NHRI in the digital age, with a specific focus on protecting and promoting digital rights and freedoms. Formed in the response to rapid evolution of digital technologies, the impact on human rights, the DRA brings together NHRIs from around the world to address emerging challenges in the digital space. Through the initiative of the South African Human Rights, the development of the Digital Rights Alliance statement was a collaborative effort involving members of the Alliance, recognizing the need for a unified approach to address the complex issues at the intersection of technology and human rights. Through a series of engagements and drawing on the expertise of its members, the DRA statement was crafted to provide a principle framework for guiding the use of digital technologies in elections while upholding human rights standards. The development of DRA statement underscores the importance of international collaboration in addressing the challenges posed by digitalization by harnessing the collective wisdom and experience of NHRI from diverse backgrounds and regions. The DRA seeks to advance a shared vision of digital rights and democracy in global community. In our interconnected world, the rise of digital technologies has transformed the landscape of democracy, presenting both opportunities and challenges. While the internet has provided a platform for unprecedented access to information and civic engagement, it has become a battleground for misinformation, disinformation, and digital manipulation. Can I just repeat that? Misinformation, disinformation, and digital manipulation can be avoided. These online activities can, however, profound consequences for people's right to vote, undermining the very foundation for our democratic principles. As we stand on the cusp of a new era, it is essential to recognize the critical role that the digital democracy plays in shaping our electoral processes. The NHRI Digital Rights Alliance statement aims to guide towards a future where digital technologies are harnessed to empower citizens and strengthen democratic institutions. It is a testament to our commitment to ensuring that every voice is heard and every vote counts, both online and offline. And this is where we challenge Commissioner Love, online and offline, to realize in South Africa. Today, we launched this statement. Let us reaffirm our dedication to the principles of democracy and human rights. Let us pledge to stand together in the fight against online activities that seek to undermine our democratic values. They seek to undermine the democracy that we fought for. Please have that in mind. Let us seize this moment as an opportunity to build a future where digital technologies are used to enhance transparency, accountability, and citizen participation in the electoral processes. Participation, especially of the youth that is full here, this morning. Can you give yourself a round of applause for being here? As I conclude, in conclusion, the launch of the Digital Rights Alliance statement resonates not only locally, but globally. And I'm sure you've seen, we've got a number of countries represented. Elections are pivotal moments in the democratic process, representing the fundamental right of people to choose their leaders. It's the only way. As a South African Human Rights Commission and as part of our election monitoring strategy, we stand at the forefront of safeguarding the rights both nationally and within the Global Committee of National Human Rights Institutions. Our commitment to ensuring integrity and respect for human rights in election transcends borders, reflecting our dedication to democratic values worldwide. By launching this statement, we reaffirm our pledge to uphold the principles of freedom, transparency, and inclusivity in the digital age, echoing the spirit of the first Black president of South Africa, Utata Nelson Mandela's enduring legacy. I thank you.
Thank you so much to Commissioner Kwinana for those thought-provoking words. And just on a side note, I think, Commissioner Kwinana, I'm going to claim my space as being from the land of the legends. And that was awesome. Thank you so much. So I'd like to call, the IEC Commissioner, Janet Love, who's going to speak to us on the elections in the age of digital technologies.
Thank you so much, and thank you especially to the Mandela University and to the Human Rights Commission for pulling together such a magnificent audience. So I am going to stand on that protocol and just really appreciate that all of you in this room and all of you online are part of the conversation. The idea of looking at digital rights in the context of elections, I think, has to start with an understanding of how we look at digital rights as a whole. And in our understanding, we have to see that any rights of a nature like digital rights have huge intersectionality, and there's a lot of balancing that has to happen. So when the introductions were being made, the idea that was being put across, which is a hugely important concern, is the fact that in the context of our digital environment, our cell phones, social media platforms, and so on, there is huge potential harm and there are a great deal of risks. But at the same time, when we're talking about digital rights, it's much more than that within the electoral space. And so I want to start by looking at what are the opportunities that digital rights ought to give us. And particularly for you who are here in this auditorium, you're young people whose ability to navigate the digital space needs to take our society forward. So we have to look at what are the opportunities. In the first instance, one of the key rights in our Constitution is the right for equal treatment. Now, in the context of the diversity of our society and in the context of ensuring that we approach things from the perspective of inclusion, there are a whole lot of opportunities that digital rights ought to give us. How do we have simultaneous interpretation of policies, of what's on ballot papers? How do we have the possibility of ensuring that the diversity of people whose abilities are facing challenges that digital artificial intelligence ought to make a lot easier? So, for example, the possibility of having things that are in the spoken language available in written form simultaneously, in addition to the fantastic work of the sign language that is happening next to me. So these are the kinds of opportunities that speak to inclusion. But also, when we talk about digital rights, very importantly, we're talking about equitable access to digital space. And here I am in the province of legends, but at the same time, I'm also in the province where there is a huge disparity in what kind of digital quality you can get, what kind of data quality you can get, not just here at your university, but in some of the very much more remote areas of this wonderful province. What you might be able to access here in this auditorium, maybe when you're in Lusikisiki, you won't be able to access. So these are things that speak to the question of digital rights, because in order for us to harness the potential, we need also to be able to ensure that the access is equitable. We look at transparency, and transparency is critical for our electoral process. The Electoral Commission goes to very far, to a very great extent, to ensure that our processes are transparent. This does not only include the fact that we engage with all of the contestants on a regular basis, that we ensure that every part of our timetable is not just gazetted, but is made known through the public mainstream media, that we spend a great deal of time in person in communities, but also engaging with people on community radio as well as through social media. And in particular, it also involves us making things transparent through the use of technology and the digital space. So, for example, our results system is a system that is not only audited by us through the use of independent auditing, but it's also a results system that all contestants can audit. When we count in voting stations and the results are displayed and can be photographed as a result slip by contestants and by local people, when those images are captured into our systems, all contestants are given a feed to be able to review those result slips and to compare them with what we capture into the system. When results are finally audited twice by people who are employed by the Commission, who come to particular centers to order the capturing of what's on the image. We also have independent auditors who look at those results before they are transmitted. But when they are transmitted, they are not transmitted to us first and to the public later. That transmission feed happens at exactly the same time to commissioners as it does to the media. And I'm saying this because that's what technology has enabled. But equally, we're in a situation where that level of transparency, which is there to ensure that people can have a real understanding of how the will of the people is captured and reflected. But that transparency also means we have a duty to protect the privacy of the voters. We have a duty to ensure that our transparency respects safety. We use the issue of access to information in a manner that has to balance with that very important requirement of protecting the people who are not just the voters, but also the contestants. So these are the opportunities that we must harness. But let us look then at what I would describe as digital harms, potential digital harms, which are obviously hugely important in electoral process. Now, why do I say obviously? All of you, if you have a cell phone, know how damaging that cell phone can be even to your own social circles. I don't think there can be a single school pupil, student here, or anybody who's been in schools with a cell phone, who doesn't know just how vicious social media can be to you personally, to your friends. There's no difference with that kind of distortion at a time not just of your social circle, but that happens during elections. Social media, we all know, is very fast. It permeates every part of our society. So in order for us to be able to ensure that contestants use it positively, we need to equip ourselves to recognize where digital harms are being perpetrated. What are the kinds of digital harms? Targeting. Targeting of people as opposed to the issues. Another kind of harm. Distorting information and deliberately telling lies. How are we going to deal with that? We need to get fact-checking, and we need to get wise about what we can do ourselves to verify and to ensure that what we've been presented with is actually credible. But we also need to know who we can report it to. Now, the Electoral Commission has worked for some time on these issues, and in order to try and safeguard our elections, in addition to using digital media in the positive ways I've outlined, we have also worked with a number of the institutions that have mandates that relate to the abuse of the digital media space. We work with the information regulator. We work with ICASA in order to ensure that there's a proper communication allocation. We work with the Film and Publications Board, who have an increased mandate to deal with many of these things, as well as with the Electoral Court when there are breaches of our code of conduct. But very importantly, we've worked for some years with civil society and those who are in the mainstream journalist space. We've set up a platform called the Real 411, and it's a platform that is there for reporting of any kinds of issues that have abused candidates, have abused information, and have deliberately distorted information, particularly about elections. Importantly, the Commission has also worked with the platforms, whether it be Meta, in terms of Facebook and Instagram, whether it is Google, or whether it is TikTok. We have worked with all the platforms to ensure that their policies have seen huge improvements. Their policies to ensure that during an election period, they identify the risks to our election, they improve their own fact-checking capability, and they then enable you as users of those platforms to report things which they then have the possibility to investigate. So, on the one hand, we have a situation where transparency is hugely important to safeguard elections, but on the other hand, we have a real commitment and a real working relationship with many partners to ensure that online harms are managed in a way as best we can to ensure that the manipulation of opinion, the distortion of information, and the harm that it can do to individual people through abuse of officials, contestants, and so on, is something that we limit. We are calling on all of you to help us to do this as well. There is no election that is the responsibility only of one organization, in this instance, the Electoral Commission. The responsibility for democracy and the responsibility for good elections lies with everybody, all citizens of our country, and no less when it comes to digital media. We have adopted continental guidelines as to how to deal with digital media, and these are ones that we really have a commitment to looking at and to taking forward. Importantly, not just in terms of practice, but also to advocate for strengthening of our laws. And so, to the law faculty of this university, there's a lot to be done. Our legal framework, when it comes to the digital environment, really does need a huge amount of strengthening, and we need to be sure that we are equipped as people with a legal framework that will guide us as well. I would be very remiss if I didn't use one example, and it's an example that is very important for the current time. This Friday is the last day for any person to apply for a special vote. You can do it online. Please do so. Equally, when you read things on your social media platforms that tell you things like all people who are 60 years or older, all observers, all this, all that, will qualify for special votes, do not believe it. Go online, and if you need a special vote, apply for it there. I'm using this because it is something that is vital for you to vote where you are registered, and I hope your presence here means that everybody who is eligible to vote has registered and will turn up to vote where you are registered, and to be sure that if you are unable to be there on voting day, you've either applied for a special vote or you have made sure that you give notice to the Chief Electoral Officer that you will be at another voting station before the elections. It's easy to do this. It's easy, it takes a few minutes. Just go to our website, or you can use the various WhatsApp numbers and so on. I say to all of you, this is your democracy, and this is one of the ways that you should own it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Love. Thank you for such an insightful, conversational talk that you have just given us. I would also like to thank you for all the wonderful work that you put in at the Commission to safeguard our democracy and to see that it moves forward. I think she deserves another round of applause. Before we carry on with our second panel, there's a young announcement. There's a white Mercedes-Benz outside with the registration number JV50GVGP. Let me repeat that. JV50GVGP. Your lights are on. They're not going to digitally switch themselves off. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Amina.
Thank you. Yes, we now have our very own colleagues who will be providing some insight as to what the speakers have said. So I'm going to call on Dr. Ongama Mtimka, Mr. Jude Maturin, and Wonga Simayile. So having listened to all of our speakers, there were some key points that each one of them raised. Misinformation, distorted information, harm, protection. And these key words then brought us to ask a very key question that relates to not only humanities, but also the law faculty as well. So the question that we ask each one of you this morning is, what is the role of the humanities and law to safeguard digital rights, promote inclusion, and preserve democratic processes, including electoral integrity in an era of digital disruption? And in particular, we're going to ask you the question based on what Commissioner Love has said, the protection of the right to free and fair elections, particularly in the digital age. Thank you.
Okay, to introduce our panel, we've got Mr. Jude Maturin. Jude is a journalism and new media educator with over 2 decades of experience, currently serving as a lecturer and undergraduate coordinator on Nelson Mandela University, Bachelor of Arts in Media, Communication and Culture. His research interests primarily focus on the intersection of new media and journalism, contributing to works on media sustainability, digital freelance media practices, journalism, education, and media development. Okay. And just a reminder, each one has 5 minutes to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Does humanity love democracy? Do the humanities love democracy? Oh, the humanities. As we enter a super election year with over 60 nations going to the polls, including South Africa in its 30th year of democracy, let us use this occasion to reflect not just on the significance of this moment for the SHRC and related state organizations, but as a pivotal learning moment for the humanities and the academy. We gather here not just for a free lunch, but because we deeply care about South Africa's elections and future. This care extends to our understanding of democracy and the rule of law, which replaced our apartheid social order, a past only some of us here who are old enough might be old enough to remember, but whose echoes are with us still. If I can take away anything from today and what's happening today, it's that the mandate and the role of state organs in ensuring free and fair elections has gotten increasingly more challenging as a result of digitization, and often in ways that we don't yet fully understand, but desperately need to. But I would like to remind everyone that elections, which we're here to talk about with this statement, are by no means an exclusive condition for democracy, respect for rule of law, a culture of human rights, a free and independent media, a vibrant and active civil society, clear separation of powers, political and social pluralism, civic participation and engagement, and the fact that you're here shows that you're actively engaging, are some of the factors that ensures that our democracy is not in COVID-intensive care. Democracy is a destination, it is a journey, and requires a reshaping of cultures. And who does this? And thus, if the humanities truly values democracy, we must consider how our pedagogy, research, community engagement can elevate these democratic values and human freedoms. This requires an interdisciplinary approach. I'm glad to see law here to address the evolving role of the citizen in the digital age. You see, the modern South African citizen is not only a citizen of a state defined by the land in which South Africa is and exists. You are also a digital citizen in a virtual space. And as much as you are influenced by the constitution and laws of South Africa, you're also influenced by the external policies of corporate giants like Alphabet, Meta, Apple, Google, ByteDance, TikTok. These entities that wield significant influence over our digital actions, quite interestingly, are organizations which under US law are exempt from liability under Section 2230 of the Communications Decency Act. So consequently, our political fates are in part influenced by corporate foreign powers, how they design their products, and of course, our own specific use of those technologies and platforms. And these technologies impact on our society in various ways, including our discourses, how we speak, and our values. If we speak about the defining values of the 21st century, we very often are starting to speak now in 4R discourse values: efficiencies, productivity, technological solutions, market fit and innovation. Are we machines? In the humanities, we value things differently: empathy, creativity, complexity, context, culture. We embrace pluralism, we valorize critical thinking. Now, that's not to mean that things like efficiency and productivity are wrong, but it's therefore the role of the humanities. We talk about revitalizing humanities, and we look at the money that's not being spent at the humanities. It's the role of the humanities to help resolve those tensions in and through the work we do. Why? Nelson Mandela once remarked, there's no such thing as apart freedom. We can't just concentrate on the study of freedom as something that we simply have in our physical and lived space. Every South African's freedom and rights are closely linked with the digital realm, necessitating heightened awareness within the humanities to navigate and leverage these new opportunities and challenges on behalf of everyone. If the humanities disappear, if not us, who? Business? IT? To do this requires some deep questions about the intersections between the challenges of the world, our human rights, our freedoms, and our teaching and our research. In what ways does online hate speech infringe on your Section 10 rights to human dignity? That's a right, but it's a digital right online. How does not knowing about cybersecurity and data protection impact on your Section 14 rights to privacy, when people can get hold of your information and use it whatever ways they want to? How does the global spread of misinformation chill and affect your Section 15 rights to belief, religion, and opinion, and your Section 16 rights to political choices? Because people are lying to you, closing down and shuttering debates and polarizing society. We spoke about inequality. How does unequal access to the internet affect our Section 9 rights to equality? And here's what I'd like to add. Where is, I was looking for Dr. Carter. How should we understand our rights under Section 12.2? The right to psychological integrity not to be subject to medical or scientific experiments without informed consent. Particularly concerning if you think about big tech's use of black box behavior and predictive analytics on an entire society and the implications thereof. And then, of course, my particular concern, why should we be studying about digital censorship like internet shutdowns and advocating more strongly for the sustainability of journalism as a public good so that we can secure our Section 16 rights of freedom to expression and media freedom, which, by the way, we'll all enjoy on Friday. Viva Media Freedom Day. Humanities must take up the cudgels by innovating curricula for students to be able to identify and monitor infringements of their human rights, including their digital human rights in spaces, and more strongly advocate for those freedoms. You can't do it if you don't know about it. We need to foster and champion research in the digital humanities that advances plural participation, development, and advancement of freedoms through humane and humanizing technology, such as maybe the use of technologies and artificial intelligence to restore our cultural archive and preserve indigenous language and art. To do this, humanities is going to need to experiment, break things, build things, and create spaces for students and staff to engage in interdisciplinary work. By encouraging creativity and interdisciplinary collaboration, we can enhance our understanding and advocacy of digital human rights, ensuring that our democratic journey continues to evolve positively, not just for this election, and not just for elections, but for the future of democracy in our society. So congratulations to the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance and the SA Human Rights Commission on this particular milestone. Let us continue to work together and continue the conversation to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jude. Thank you for such an insightful address. Before we move on to our next speaker, I've just noted something. We are privileged this morning into afternoon to have not only an interdisciplinary mix in our two panels, but we also have an intergenerational mix. Our next speaker is the youngest of the two panels. With that, I call upon Mr. Wongaletu Smaile. Wongaletu Smaile is a postgraduate associate in the Faculty of Law at Nelson Mandela University, an LLM candidate, meaning a master's candidate in law, with a research focus in the development of national minimum wage and the protection of workers' rights in South Africa. Can we give him another round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you, Amina and Lungelo. Let me say all protocols observed. I think Jude should have been given the law aspect of his input. And thank you to all the speakers that have spoken so far and for your remarks. Much of what I written down and wanted to say was said already. But I will still say a few things. We celebrate 30 years of democracy, 30 years of freedom, and 30 years of basic human rights. One of the most fundamental rights in a democracy is the right to free and fair elections. This is enshrined in the Constitution, in Section 19 of the Constitution, which provides that every adult citizen has the right to vote in elections for any legislative body established in terms of the Constitution, and to do so in secret, and to stand for public office, and if elected, to hold office. Every citizen is free to make political choices, which includes the right to form a political party, to participate in the activities or to recruit members for a political party, and to campaign for political party or cause. Our democracy was preceded by more than 300 years of oppression, 300 years of racism, 300 years of land dispossession. During this time, only the white minority participated in elections. Africans were generally excluded from free and fair elections. With that backdrop, let us look at the 29th of May. You, particularly Africans, do not merely have the right to vote on the 29th of May. You have a duty to vote. You have a duty because of our history. It cannot be that on the 29th of May, when those who formerly oppressed you are lining up to cast their votes, you sleep. Remember, for us to have the right to vote, many sacrifices were made. Many were killed on the streets as they demanded freedom. Many were incarcerated for decades. Many suffered brutally under a brutal system. Many were tortured and killed in prisons. Your participation on the 29th of May will be a reflection of your appreciation and gratitude for those sacrifices that were made so that we would have elections to begin with. So, if anything from what I said today, on the 29th of May, you have a duty to vote. You have a duty because of our history. Now, on digital rights and protection, I agree with Commissioner Love. I hope I said that right. With the commissioner from the IEC. We need within the legal framework, because technology and the fourth industrial revolution is advancing at such a high speed, the law also needs to catch up. We need to have policies that take into account what is happening in the digital space. Look at, for example, artificial intelligence. You can now create a video from nothing. You can use people's faces, their voices, and create a video which would pretend as if I'm the one speaking on the video, whereas I did not make such a statement. So the law needs to catch up with that. There needs to be safeguards within the IEC and within our law that will protect that right, the right to free and fair election. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smaile. Short and sweet, sir. Can we give him another round of applause? Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Ongama Mtimka. As he comes up, I will introduce him. Dr. Mtimka is a lecturer in the Department of History and Political Studies. He is also a political analyst and treasurer of the South African Association of Political Studies, chief editor of the African Journal of Political Risk, and secretary of African Association of Political Studies. Can we give him a round of applause?
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to contribute to this panel also. I'd like to greet the commissioners and the chairpersons and the distinguished guests that are sitting up in front, standing on the protocols that were observed earlier. All I should be saying, being a third speaker in a panel with such a narrow, focused question, is I agree with the two of them. And then I sit down. But because we are academics, we'll find a way to say something. So let me quickly say a few things. One, the digital environment. Is it a place to be? Because remember, as political scientists, we tackle the questions of who gets what, when, and how. But is it an environment to be in the first place? First of all, I've said this in a session we had with the IEC as the university, where we had the chief executive, Mr. Saima Mabulo, where we were tackling this question around digital, governing digital access during elections. That the thing about the digital spaces is that, one, they have interestingly changed the pathways to political socialization or political awareness, such that many of you, especially the young people here, if there's a meeting in the community hall to discuss community issues, chances are that you're not going to pitch up because you're thinking, isn't those abantu cool or older people's things. But you log into TikTok, you log into Twitter, and you come across political information. Interestingly, about a month ago, my 15-year-old kid watched the Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin before I did, and he watched it on TikTok. And he was trying to generate a conversation with me about it, and I hadn't watched it yet. Point I'm making is that these digital platforms have made it possible for younger people to be aware of political developments and then participate much quicker than invitations to community halls did. So that means from a political awareness point of view, this is happening much faster than it would. So I argue this point about the transformed city hall. Also, I think it's democratized. It's democratized another leg of political participation. Radio and TV, radio in big ways in South Africa, creates access to political information and government information for a lot of people, and they participate in those platforms. But an even younger generation of South Africans, or in fact people across the world, participate or know about politics now because of social media, which are a lot more accessible than radio for younger people. And then also, I think one of the exciting things about digital platforms is that the elite, ordinary person divide has been breached on social media. Because a politician is going to be saying something, and then someone from Gqeberha village somewhere engages that politician about what they are saying directly, unmediated, and it's amazing. So the question is, the answer to my own question is that the digital space is the space to be. It's desirable. So I'm going to skip what I was going to say in terms of introduction about digital rights, because I think they were mentioned by both commissioners from human rights and the IEC, Dr. Love, in terms of some of the things that constitute, digital rights, and also the colleagues that spoke earlier. So I want to jump in to answer the question. Maybe let me just cover two other things that I think were not covered as far as how harms happen in the digital space. We know about cancel culture, how people get cancelled because of their ideas, but also cancelled in inverted commas because nobody gets cancelled and then we have to bury them. Okay, but cancelled nonetheless as a virtual construct. The scandalization of political choices. You say something that suggests that your beliefs are aligned with a particular political party, and then you're going to have a lot of people jumping in on your tweet or post and commenting and saying all nasty things, which in a way affects your freedom of association right, the right to freely associate with anyone because of this tendency to scandalize. And then lastly, around these introductory comments, I must commend the IEC. I was very proud. I was honored to be part of an expert panel going with the IEC in Addis Ababa to lobby the rest of, in fact, it was these regulations on regulating social media during elections, where they were engaging the rest of Africa as far as coming on board and asking the AU to adopt these, which they had developed together, these guidelines. And it was good to see how they were, in fact, holding big tech accountable for some of the things that they allow to happen on their platforms, and big tech committing in those sessions that they were going to do things better. So it's good that now the Human Rights Commission as well as the Alliance are coming together. The NHRI Digital Rights Alliance are also coming and adding their voices on making the digital space a lot safer. Quickly, probably I have another minute now. Okay, in this minute, what can we do as the humanities? The first thing is research. I mean, we've been researching and writing about how technological advancement impacts lives. When we've sat in strategy planning sessions, whether at departments or in faculties, we argue the point that as everybody runs towards STEM and they are producing technologies that are making life fascinating, we keep saying the role for us as humanities remains, because somebody has got to study how society is changing as a result of these technological advancements. So we argue that we remain relevant in that sense. But what we tend to do, we tend to lag behind praxis. We tend to lag behind. The gap is too wide sometimes between what we get our students and ourselves to study and what happens in reality. So now, for example, it's the nexus between human rights and technology and democracy, and in fact, also how susceptible the sovereignty of countries that are technologically advanced to foreign intervention, not in terms of invasions by armies, but in terms of manipulation of audience preferences in those countries. I mean, think Brexit, for example. How during Brexit there were allegations of foreign influence, and that was influencing how people were going to vote, and that had consequences for Britain as a country. So but we are busy studying the philosophy of human rights. Okay, Karabo, you still, I think you still should have a job, but between the philosophical and the scientific, we need to keep a fair balance between those so that the issues that are emerging in practice, we are quite aware of them. Before I get called to stop, engagement. Around engagement, a colleague, Savo Helieta, spoke once and said, academics can change the world if they stop speaking to themselves. And he was right. That article spread like wildfire. We must stop speaking to ourselves. Let's engage. Let's cutting edge commentary. We want to still first study before we can comment on emerging issues. But sometimes, based on the fact that we have a reservoir of knowledge, we are able to comment on things as they emerge, and then be able to actually provide cutting-edge commentary, even if we're writing opinion pieces, before we can write the scientific journal articles. Sometimes we have preference as academics for wanting it to do the other way around, because we have an imposter syndrome, the idea that we don't want to be out there and take risks and say things, whereas we have not looked at the data in more depth. But sometimes we must take the risks and comment as things emerge so that we can provide quicker feedback. Involvement and partnering with stakeholders, providing feedback to emerging processes, critical commentary and cooperation. As I say, when we went to Addis Ababa, the IEC and all the other electoral management bodies were busy in a law-making process or regulation-making process. But they said, instead of us going to call academics when we are already implementing, let's have them be part. So the point I'm making is that the outside world is hungry for our input as things emerge. But we should avail ourselves as academics to also contribute as things emerge. And then, last but not least, I think Jude covered this part, the teaching that we have to do and the research that we have to guide our students to do, but also the stakeholder presentations. We should be able to go out into these stakeholders, speak to them as they are conceptualizing policies, and not wait for them to first have a draft and then they come and then we want to sit in ivory tower and criticize. Sometimes the emerging research by our students and by ourselves, we should be good stewards of taking it out there to the stakeholders that matter and have to do something about the research, so that as they conceptualize things, they're taking things. And then lastly, advocacy, collaborations, and pioneering. We should not shy away from having to, be part of initiatives that develop infrastructure for access for people in remote areas. We should make noise about the digital divide. As Haile Selassie said, throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who should have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, and the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most that have made it possible for evil to triumph. Thank you.
With that, I would like to say thank you very much to our panelists. Dr. Mtimka, I have a confession. Even if you didn't have that extra minute, I wouldn't have said no because I was so enthralled. Thank you very much. Can we give them another round of applause?
Thank you so much, Lungelo. So I also just have a comment. I think Ongama said lastly about 4 times. And also just to our students, when your lecturers say, we are only going to take 5 minutes of your time, we are lying. So I'd like to call upon our CEO of the SAHRC, Mr. Vusumuzi Mkhize, to introduce our chairperson of the SAHRC.
Co-program directors, I think this is a setup for me to fail and fail dismally when I have to follow such excellence in the university. The manner in which they have dissected what was presented and what's happening here today, I think the 3 speakers make it difficult for me to say anything more unless I enroll in the university and obtain my own doctoral degree. Co-program directors, my chairperson of the South African Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Kwinana, the commissioner from IEC, Commissioner Dr. Janet Love, in absentia, and he asked that I do apologize for him. He had to leave, the acting VC, Professor Kiet. He had to attend to some emergency. But to the management, as well as the lecturers of the university, Nelson Mandela University, to the colleagues and HRIs that are online, SRC, the students of the university who are here, allow me to say good afternoon. Sanbonan, Molo, Teningatin Katelenji, Dallas Cleline, Sesfunuk as is Opagama Konangoku. But allow me to say that technology is either a friend or a foe. We have a choice to make. And importantly, we would like to say that the digital world is both aggressive and inevitable. Artificial intelligence is both irresistible and yet a very powerful influencer. Therefore, then, we have a right to choose how to use it, when to use it. We are here today because we are talking about the human rights in the digital world, a digital era. So the young ones, I'm 2000, it's an internet of things. So when we are unable to understand, they say it's an internet of things. But this can be both harmful and yet productive. So we have to choose. So we would like to appreciate the university's opportunity that they've given to us with the Digital Alliance to launch this particular program and this statement that will resound across the world. And we thank those who are from Denmark, Ethiopia, and Australia who have joined us. I am asked to do a very simple thing, but a very important thing, to introduce my chairperson, to be able to bring us to the purpose of today, and that is the launch of the digital statement on elections. But before we do that, because we've been sitting, and this is an activist I'm about to introduce, this is a man of multiple talents. This is a man who has struggled for this freedom to be enjoyed by all. He has been incarcerated, so he understands that freedom did not come for free. So I want us to do the following so that we stop sleeping. I don't know how do you deal with students who sleep in the lecture room. But for me, I have a strategy. I want them to rise and start saying, "Aye, human rights, aye. I don't hear you. Aye, human rights, aye. Aye, NHRI Digital Alliance world over, aye. Hola, Chairperson SHRC, Commissioner Nissan, hola. Viva democracy, viva. Now again, amalungelo wethu ama human rights, and we say to them, abawaziyo, abasoze bawona ngithi. Now, who can sing this song then? Amalungelo wethu. Wey madoda. Ngathi silele manje. Allow me, before the chairperson then arise, can I just give me an opportunity to ask Commissioner Matlingozi, he's the only one who has not been introduced, but this is our commissioner. If you can just rise, Commissioner Matlingozi, so that colleagues can see that you are here with us. Can I then ask the leadership of the SHRC to please rise and just face the students so they see that I didn't only bring the elderly like me here, but I've got the young ones here, CFO, COO, Dr. Kwanele, the provincial manager, who is well known, Dr. Eileen Carter in blue. Please rise and greet your students. And then I've got my communicator who deals with the digital world and misinformation, information, Wisani Baloyi. The only thing I don't know about him, and I've always asked this, and now I see also Lungelo has joined him. Is this, and the CFO here, they've got a particular culture of beard, and I don't know what's going on. But you do look different. Chairperson, allow me to call the chairperson, and you might wonder who this chairperson is. And Chairperson Commissioner Nissan, if I were to just read a brief bio about him, I did say he's an activist. But importantly, Mr. Chris Nissan holds a joint board diploma in theology from the Federal Theological Seminary in Pietermaritzburg. He also graduated with a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree. After years of ecumenical, community and political organization-based work, Commissioner Nissan was appointed as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Legislature. He served as a Deputy Speaker, MEC of Economic Affairs, and was National Coordinator of the Masakane campaign for the Department of Constitutional Development from 1994 to 1999. Commissioner Nissan is currently in his second term with the Commission, having been recently appointed to the higher responsibility of being the chairperson. Hola, Commissioner Nisin, hola. Thanks.
Thank you, CEO. I must acknowledge the management and staff of Nelson Mandela University. In the absence, the acting Vice Chancellor and the Deputy Vice Chancellor is here. And I would like to acknowledge the role that you and your family played. I was with your brother, your late brother, Tobilan Boyka, in prison. Thank you for the role that you've played and your family in the struggle for democracy in this country. I want to greet Commissioner Love, Commissioner Kwinana, our CEO, the executive, Commissioner Mandla. And I also want to acknowledge all the students that are here and the learners. And I wish you well on behalf of the Commission in your studies, and make sure that you do become the best, because you can become the best. My task is to read you the position statement on human rights and elections in the digital age. In 2024, over 70 countries across the globe will be embarking pivotal electoral processes that shape the future of their democracies, and more people are expected to vote in national elections than ever before. At the same time, the nature of elections has been transformed by the rise of the digital technologies in popular social media platforms and their use in election campaigns and disseminating of information, and by the deployment of technology in elections management and administration. Recognizing the magnitude of this global electoral landscape, this position statement is issued by the Digital Rights Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, NHRIs, in recognition of the significance of the global electoral landscape in 2024. As guardians of human rights, we acknowledge the unprecedented role that technologies play in modern elections, and we affirm our commitment to guiding and monitoring their deployment in a manner that upholds the principle of democracy, transparency, accountability, and the protection and promotion of human rights. Human rights obligations of duty bearers in election. We reiterate the states that bear the primary responsibility for guaranteeing human rights during elections, including ensuring non-discrimination, safeguarding freedom of expression, and providing effective remedies for human rights violations. States must guarantee citizens' rights to vote and be elected without fear, without bias, while also addressing any breaches that occur during the electoral process. Given the enhanced mandate and roles during electoral periods, it is imperative that state bodies such as the General Election Committee, administrative courts, police, and public administration, including data protection authorities, remain especially vigilant and be ready to undertake urgent actions to address and resolve disputes and disagreements related to elections promptly in order to uphold electoral fairness and protection of human rights. Moreover, business actors should act with human rights due diligence also in the context of elections, as prescribed by the UN Guiding Principles on Human Rights in Business. This means businesses which activities touch upon or impact elections, including media companies and tech companies providing social platforms, search engines, and generative AI, should meet their responsibilities to respect human rights and to assess and mitigate potential human rights impacts related to the technologies during elections, promote transparency and actively combat harmful and misleading AI-generated content to uphold human rights. In particular, we highlight the following areas where digital technologies can have serious adverse impacts on the enjoyment of human rights in the context of elections, and which therefore heightened demand for attention. Misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation and disinformation. We stress the importance of appropriate responding and counseling to the dissemination of misinformation and disinformation, which undermines freedom of expression, democratic processes, and transparency. The risk of AI-generated misinformation and disinformation, such as deep fakes, heighten the need for vigilance in the run-up to and during elections, while still ensuring that all people have the right to actively engage in public debate and dialogue. Secondly, hate speech and gender-based violence. Addressing technology-facilitated hate speech and gender-based violence during elections is crucial for maintaining a fair and respectful electoral environment. Digital harms have severe consequences for the targeted groups and undermines democracy, silence marginalized voices, exacerbated polarization. Thirdly, artificial intelligence. The use of artificial intelligence in elections with its specific characters, e.g. capacity, complexity, dependency on data and autonomous behavior, cause not only harm to the individual, but also cause collective and societal harms. We call for the participation of multiple stakeholders, including NHRIs, in creating norms, rules, and standards relating to the design, use, endorsement, and governance of AI technology in elections that abide by international human rights law. Fourthly, internet access. The internet must be recognized and governed as a global public good in an inclusive, transparent, democratic, and accountable manner. And states should commit to the guaranteeing a neutral and open internet, which is particularly important during elections. Principles for human rights-based approach to technology in elections. 1, rule of law and good governance. The rule of law principles of legitimacy, legality, necessity, and proportionality, as well as the principles of good e-governance, should be integrated into policy, processes, and practice for digitalization, elections, building on the value of empowerment of stakeholders. Secondly, human rights due diligence. Any digital transformation of election process should undergo human rights due diligence and start with assessing the risk of human rights. This includes the incorporation of human rights impact assessment in the development, implementation, and assessment of technologies deployed in elections. Likewise, business actors across the technology ecosystem, such as providers of platforms, internet access, Likewise, business actors across the technology ecosystem, such as providers of platforms, internet access, search engines, etc., should act with the human rights due diligence in the context of elections by assessing and addressing the way in which their services are negatively impacting on human rights. Such assessment should address potential discriminatory impacts and ensure alignment with international human rights standards. Thirdly, transparency and accountability. We advocate for the transparent and accountable deployment of technologies in all phases of the electoral cycle. This includes, but is not limited to, voter registration, campaign monitoring, and result tabulation, and should also include combating false narratives about the about the electronic voting system and the entire electoral process and preserve trust in the system. Fourthly, inclusivity and non-discrimination. We emphasize the importance of ensuring that developing technologies do not perpetuate or exacerbate existing inequalities. All citizens, regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, race, or any other characteristics, should not have equal access to and benefit from electoral technologies. In particular, states need to take positive measures to improve accessibility of certain vulnerable groups, such as people with disabilities, older people, and other minorities, by enabling assistive technologies and making election information available in alternative formats. For people with limited access to technology or limited capacity to use it, there must be an offline option available that allow them to participate in election processes in democracy in a dignified and a fair way that does not marginalize them. Protection of privacy. We assert the right to privacy as a fundamental human right, and we call for the responsible use of technology to safeguard citizens' personal information during electoral processes. Any collection, storage, or processing of data must comply with international privacy standards. Freedom of expression. We emphasize, number 5, freedom of expression. We emphasize the importance of open, respectful, and informed discussion of political ideas and opinions. Healthy electoral processes require the ability to engage in political discourse in society. Number 7, cybersecurity and integrity. We stress the critical need for robust cybersecurity measures to protect electoral infrastructure and systems from interference, manipulation, or any malicious activities that may undermine the integrity of the electoral process. Number 8, public participation and education. A robust, diverse, inclusive, and protective civic space and participation online and offline must be ensured during elections. We support initiatives that foster public understanding and engagement in the use of technologies in elections. Citizens should be informed about and meaningfully engaged in technologies in the use of their implications and how their rights are protected. Number 9, analog offline alternatives. The use of technology in election needs to be perceived as a means of fulfilling rights and not as an end in itself. In certain cases, the use of the technology and the internet is not desirable and may even run counter to human rights law. Therefore, the appropriateness of digital election systems should be assessed, and it should be considered whether offline options are in some cases better suited for upholding human rights and ensuring the integrity of elections and the broader trust in democratic processes. Implementation. Number 1, role and contribution of NHRIs. NHRIs are instrumental in bridging and mediating concerns over human rights violation in the nexus between business, government, and civil society. And it's essential that NHRIs increasingly play the role in realization to the use and application of digital technologies in elections. NRIs must provide capacity building initiatives to electoral management bodies, civil society organizations, and relevant stakeholders to enhance the understanding of the human rights implications of technologies. We also encourage international cooperation, knowledge sharing, and peer learning among NHRIs, fostering a collaborative approach to address the challenges and the opportunities posed by technologies in elections. Number 2, multi-stakeholder engagement. I'm nearly finished. The specific characteristics and complexity of digital technologies necessitates the engagement and participation of all stakeholders in the development of regulations and standards, as well as the national, regional, and international oversight bodies that relates to technology. Multi-stakeholders participation should be institutionalized with relevant bodies, expert groups, and networks, explicitly referencing human rights protection. In conclusion, number 5, I forgot to read the other first two, but it's in the position paper. Because there's different headings and with different numbering. In conclusion, in line with the Paris Principles, we affirm our commitment to safeguarding human rights during electoral processes, emphasizing the need for responsible and ethical use of technologies. By upholding these principles, we contribute to the advancement of democratic values and the protection of fundamental rights in the digital age. About this statement has been prepared jointly by members of the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance. The Digital Rights Alliance is a global network of national human rights institutions that aims to consolidate the role of national human rights institutions in the digital age to better protection and promote digital rights and freedoms. Alliance currently counts members from 31 countries in Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Asia Pacific region, and is coordinated by the Danish Institute for Human Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the position statement of today.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for all the hard work that you and the Commission put towards safeguarding our rights. With that, I hand over to the members of the Danish Institute of Human Rights for votes of support. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I think this is what happens when you go live, okay? There's bound to be gremlins. I can see them busy sorting out the sound.
Thank you so much for your patience. While we are trying to sort out our digital technology issues that we have going in the corner, we are going to listen to the recorded Danish statement. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it does come through for us.
A big thank you to the South African Human Rights Commission for inviting us to take part in this important event on elections and human rights in the digital age. Back in 2021, the Danish Institute for Human Rights reached out to our fellow NHRIs and national human rights institutions to explore the impact of technology on human rights and the role of national human rights institutions in protecting human rights both online and offline. This is how the South African Human Rights Commission became a founding member of the NHRI Digital Rights Alliance. We share the sense that even if we live on different continents, in countries with very different realities, we are faced with the same challenges. Human rights are infringed upon, restricted and abused through surveillance, through online harassment, disinformation, or digital exclusion. The Danish Institute for Human Rights is currently chairing the European network of NHRIs. And we can confirm that in this great year of elections, the issue of democratic processes and how they are impacted in the digital space is high on the agenda, both in Denmark and in Europe and in the world. It is a great challenge for all of us globally to safeguard human rights during election processes as they are increasingly digitalized. So I want to thank you again for taking this important initiative and commend you for your dedicated engagement to ensure that the upcoming elections in South Africa will happen in a way that upholds democratic principles and fundamental human rights. We look very much forward to continuing the engagement with the South African Human Rights Commission and other NHRIs in the Digital Rights Alliance, and wish you a successful event. Thank you.
We are greatly and profoundly thankful for such support. I now hand over to Commissioner Kwinana to give us some closing remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. A number of questions have been asked, and I don't know if you felt that they were answered, but you have all been challenged not to sleep. On the 29th day of May 2024, 30 years of democracy for South Africans. For some, it is a right that they will be realizing for the first time. However, for those of us who were there in 1994, it is a right that we have enjoyed, and we will definitely not sleep. I challenge you, as you have been challenged by the youngest of the panelists, to not sleep. It is a right that many, such as your Hector Peterson, would have wanted to experience. Tsietsi Mashinini, and many more. Let us not take that right. Let us not take that right for granted. We walk on blood-stained land in South Africa. There are people that are still experiencing the scars of apartheid. We've got farm dwellers, we've got human rights activists that even today they would want to experience the democracy that we are talking about. In the digital age, as it has been said, Lusikisiki does not experience the same privileges as Port Elizabeth, and that is the truth. Gqeberha, for using the correct word. And it is so that even in parts such as Morukweng in Northwest, probably an area that you have never heard about, they are yet to experience some of the privileges that here in Gqeberha and even in Gauteng are possible. So we have all been challenged once more. And I'm thinking of my Commissioner Prof sitting there, Commissioner Mahlingosi, that have been challenged that as academics, you do engage and you don't talk to yourselves. And I think that is probably the reason why, Commissioner Prof, you've jumped the ship. And that is why we now have in the commission Commissioner Professor Madlingosi to join us. He's no longer talking to himself. So academics, where you are, please, whilst you teach the students, please come over. We need you in those stakeholder engagements so that we can develop policies that can take us forward. I do believe that as a country, we can only do it if we talk and if we call out all those things that are not working out properly so that we can make sure that we fix all the divide that exists out there. And technology being so not nice to me right now. I've got my beautiful notes that I wrote and I can't seem to find, but I'm gonna keep on trying because I want to go there. They've just decided to hide themselves. You know how they do that. But I'm sure I'll, I don't like this tablet. Professor Madlingos, you did say we must stick to our usual one. This one, it just does those things to me. Is that where I am? Yes. Let us apply for that special vote. As the South African Human Rights Commission, we are happy to tell you that we have been given the observer status by IEC. So we will be there in our numbers. We will have their regalia, which will be written observers. And we will be making sure that we report in real time as the app that has been developed by our Dr. Carter there. We are really grateful for this initiative. Our role as human beings, it is definitely to guard democracy. We must jealously guard democracy. We must make sure that wherever we occupy those spaces, we do not repost things that are likely to threaten our democracy. We must make sure that we are responsible as citizens of South Africa in ensuring that we do not threaten our democracy. It is definitely a place to be. As a South African, I say it is time for us to be where we are. And one of the speakers spoke about the composition of the panelists, and I thought he was going for the composition of those that were sitting in front. And I was just excited to realize that there is 2 women in front. I don't know if you noticed, whilst there were 3 men. Again, another challenge that we must fight to ensure that there is representative of our gender. Women are more. Are we not? Can I see by show of hands, how many are we here? Look at that. Are we not outnumbering men? It is time for a woman president, I say. Let us go out there and be the stewards of this democracy, hard-earned, blood fought for, always remind yourselves of our past, where we come from. Young people, you do not know, there were times in our lives where we had toilets that would have been written only blacks, most filthy, could not be used, and we did have toilets that would have been written whites only. That is the history that you must know. Yesterday, when we celebrated Freedom Day, I had to remind those elderly people that we are with that it is about our past whilst we go forward with our future. Whilst we do not say we want apartheid back, because I've heard people say that, I would never, not in the longest time, stand up before you and tell you that apartheid must come back. There would have been a time in my life as a legal practitioner 100 years ago, as of last year, I would not have been allowed to be a legal practitioner. I was only allowed to stay in the kitchen. As a lawyer, I could not practice law. But that was for a white woman. That was 100 years ago. It was realized. But for a black woman, as of last year, it was 67 years later. So look at the history. Remember all these moments. Once the law was not even recognize you as a human being, as a woman, and that should make you wake up, make sure that bed troubles you, feel like you're with that mosquito inside that bed so that you stand up and go to the polls. Can I hear you on this one? So the digital world, just the other day, I had an opportunity to write with regard to a violation of rights for a business. And it was a young person that was involved. And it was very sad to realize that. Once you apply to become ambassadors of products, you become influencers, but when things go wrong, you forget one thing, to read the terms and conditions. Do not forget, if lawyers are in the house, teach those that are not in that space, that once you're an ambassador, but school yourself first so that you know exactly what is it that you need to protect yourself against. When your right is being violated, make sure that you don't go out there and violate a right, but instead follow the due process in order to protect yourself. So when they don't pay you as agreed, just go back to the terms and conditions and read there if indeed what you are now saying on the social media, it is the truth, because sometimes it might just be problematic. And I say people are moving forward. So people were killed, people brutally died. So let us go there. Once we vote, let's be responsible about the information that we are sharing. And we are so grateful for everyone that has attended. But of course, the real vote of thanks is going to be done by Dr. Carter. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Before we move on to our very last speaker, I would like to offer our profound thanks from both myself and my co-program director for being such a lovely audience. And on top of that, we'd like to thank the technical team working tirelessly behind the scenes. And yeah, one last thing, I'd like to thank our sign language interpreters. Access to these kinds of profiles is very important. You are thanked and you are appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lungelo. I'd like to call upon Dr. Eileen Carter, who's the Provincial Manager of the Eastern Cape SAHRC. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I promise I'm going to be very quick, but just as part of our vote of closure, can we try one last time, Lynn, whether we can hear you online and our partners online, just to make a quick vote of thanks and closure from your side, where after I'm just going to quickly wrap it up. Lynn?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you for letting us be part of this wonderful initiative. I'm here because I'm the daily coordinator of the Digital Rights Alliance, and I just want to say that we really encourage co-creation and peer learning. So the South African Human Rights Commission taking this initiative is really appreciated. And then I just want to not repeat what my director has already said, but just let a few other people from the Alliance take the word to say their word of support. So if I can pass over to Commissioner Abdi Jibril from the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission.
Thank you very much. I do not also take a lot of time. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission understands the advantage of the technology in promoting human rights, but we also understand it is a foe, as the CEO said. We are having a re-election in June, and we are going to use the statement. It has been helpful, so it will help us to guide the Ethiopian Electoral Board and also our activity. So I would like to say thank you to Nelson Mandela University, to South African Human Rights Commission, also to Danish Institute for Human Rights for coordinating us. Thank you again for the opportunity.
And now let's call on Lorraine Finlay from Australia.
Well, thank you so much. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. My name's Lorraine Finlay and I'm the Australian Human Rights Commissioner, and I'm so honoured to be joining you from Sydney, Australia it's now 9 o'clock in the evening, our time, and it's just been so inspiring to hear about the work that you're doing to strengthen democracy and put the focus on our democratic rights, and inspiring to be part of this event. So thank you so much for having me listen to what you're doing, and I'd like to congratulate the South African Human Rights Commission and the Digital Rights Alliance and the Danish Institute of Human Rights for bringing this work together, for bringing us all together. And at the Australian Human Rights Commission, we're very much looking forward to continuing to work with all of the members of the Digital Rights Alliance and with everybody in the room tonight to ensure that our critical work in strengthening democracy and strengthening human rights continues to be a focus. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. I don't know if our Brazilian or Kenyan colleagues wants to say a few words. Otherwise, I'll pass over to Eileen. Cyrus, please go ahead.
If I may, just to thank you and the Nelson Mandela University, as well as the South African Human Rights Commission, for putting this together and also inviting us. We all appreciate that elections are increasingly becoming regular and constant, not only in Africa, but the world over. And technology has constantly been deployed in these elections, and it has the potential to enhance democracy as well as inhibit. Our concern as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has been the extent to which technology can be applied to advance the enjoyment of human rights. We've also noted, and this has also been alluded to by previous speakers, that there are a number of concerns around data protection, the misuse of technology to disinform, and at times to also distort information. The statement is quite timely, and we highly welcome and we remain committed to supporting the enjoyment of human rights, not only in the digital spaces, but also in the elections. And we hope moving forward that this will provide the right impetus for us the world over to ask ourselves how best we can leverage on technology to advance human rights and not to leave anyone behind because of the digital divide that has also been spoken about. Otherwise, thank you and we support.
Thank you, Cyrus. I think that was it. So I wish you a wonderful lunch and continuation of the event, and see you soon in the Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lean, and thank you to all our partners online. So mine is just a quick vote of thanks. Thank you so much for everyone in the room. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Prof. Andre Kiert and the NMU team for the invaluable support and collaboration from the university. Your commitment to fostering these partnerships between academia and human rights institutions has been instrumental in driving forward our mission. Commissioner Love, I was told this morning that I am dressed like the IEC promotional material. I have not crossed the floor to the other commission, but we just wanted to make you feel at home. So thank you so much for being here today and your contributions and your insightful message. Then as a special thank you to our esteemed commissioners for their leadership, as well as the CEO, CFO, and COO, as well as our colleagues here from National as well, especially also Commissioner Koinana. Your unwavering commitment to upholding human rights principles serves as an inspiration as well to us all. I also want to express my appreciation to the leadership of our chairperson for his vision and dedication to advancing the work of the Human Rights Commission. Your steadfast commitment to promoting transparency, integrity, and respect for human rights in electoral processes is commendable. So I further want to extend just a warm thank you to our NHRI fraternity online for their collaboration and solidarity in enhancing and advancing human rights globally. Your partnership is invaluable as we work together to address the challenges of the digital age. So lastly, everyone in the room, thank you so much for attending. And we would like to also invite you to reflections outside and further discussions. It is through gatherings like these that we strengthen our networks, share ideas, and reaffirm our collective commitment to protecting and promoting human rights. Just a quick one of thank you through the rollout team, Zuki, Siko, Dali, Noma, Tanya, Sibo, Fadla, and Wisani, and I hope I haven't left anyone out here from the Human Rights Commission. Thank you so much for everyone. And thank you for your contributions and commitments. And like my colleague Fadla says, we cannot infringe upon your right to food. There will be refreshments outside, and we hope to see you at our next engagement as well. Thank you.